Welcome to the Industry of Comics, episode 26, ladies and gentlemen. It's been 1 year since we started the show, and what a great guest to have on for our 1 year anniversary, the great Joe Benitez, who great and powerful, and you even got the Return of the Jedi gear on. Yeah, I was hoping that was going to say revenge.
Revenge, yeah.
Yeah. So, Joe, one of the big things that we like to do is connect our comic creators that we have on the show with their beginnings in the comic book world. Not necessarily your first job yet, but what was the first comic book you remember getting, and where did you get it from?
The Titans, the George Perez Teen Titans anti-drug book. I got it in elementary. That was the first comic I owned. Was that one. And I remember as a little kid, one of the neighbors gave us a box of of Archie and Veronica. Like, it was just a box full of them. And it was kind of like our communal comics. Like, everybody would take a pack home, and I just remember that newsprint smell. Like, just loving that smell and flipping through that. So just enjoying that particular medium then. And as a kid, I remember seeing comics in the racks, but didn't buy them. It wasn't until I think probably 9 or 10 years old when I got that Teen Titans.
The Keebler one, the one that came in the Keebler. Joe, I have two of them behind me that I'm trying to find. They are literally behind me, but I can't find them. I love that. The one, where it was like
with Speedy walking on the cover.
Yeah. Right. That's a great issue, man. I think that they did like a giveaway one, and then they did one where they charged $1 for it and they gave all proceeds. I love those promo comics. Those are some of the favorite comics, and those end up being a lot of first issues for a lot of people.
Sure. Radio Shack was really big. Kmart, right? We just did the last night where I got a bundle of the Kmart giveaways for Taz's 40th anniversary. So yeah, it's a good way to kind of start off. So
yeah.
Well, and Brian's first comic was that SpaghettiOs, right?
Yes, it was. Hey, Dennis, your audio is all off. It's really.
So was that Joe? Were you attracted to the art?
Oh, it's always been that. Yeah, I mean, it was the first comic that I actually bought. It was when I was 12 years old at a liquor store. I got a G.I. Joe 47, I think, or 41. It's got Roadblock on the cover with his 52 caliber gun, Mike Zeck cover. It's I remember buying that, and that kind of got steamrolled, because then it's like I went to Target and they had the packs, the G.I. Joe. Because the thing is, G.I. Joe was my thing when I was a kid. I loved the little action figures. It was just completely enthralled with them. I just loved them. And when I saw in the cartoon, so when I saw the comic, I was like, oh, let me check that out. And that was issue 41 or 47. I think it was 41. Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
That's the Assault on Cobra Island.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. And I needed to buy all the previous ones. And luckily, Target was selling these packs for like $3 for like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And I would get a bunch of them. But and then, I kept buying them. And then I discovered, I think it was Mark Silvestri's X-Men Avengers. I don't know if he did that. Well, I got that book, but the next book that really made an impact on me was Punisher War Journal.
Okay.
And and it's like, then I got because I was buying G.I. Joe books, it's like I bought the G.I. Joe yearbook number 2, but I didn't know who drew that. I didn't know that there was no, it didn't say who drew it, or the art wise, or it just, it was just a symbol. And I remember the first time I realized who it was on Nam. No, it was, and he also did the covers for G.I. Joe. And it was on Nam when I saw that symbol again. And then I flipped through it and it's like Michael Golden. It's like, oh shit. And then I bought all of the Nam. But the G.I. Joe yearbook, that is, I think I was 14 or 15. And that's the first time that I was like, this is what I want to do. Whatever this is, whatever this magical art thing is, whatever, I want to do this. This is, and that's the key issue that got me into really being passionate about working in comics. But
so were you not doodling or anything before?
No, I've always drawn. I mean, one of my earliest memories, my mom was a seamstress at a factory across the street from where we used to live, so she could kind of take care of me or watch over me while she worked. And she would cut out this butcher board because that's what they use for patterns. And I would sit on the floor and I would draw fire engines and Spider-Man.
Wow.
That's the reason what I used to do when we went to this place called Zodi's back in the 70s.
Yeah.
It's like whenever I went by clothing and they had the little tags and it had Spider-Man or Superman or Batman, I would just kind of snap them and take them home and then trace them or just copy them. So that's what I would do, just copy those characters. And that's was my first introduction to actually drawing any comic book characters. And but I mean, I always drew that. Like I said, one of my first memories was that, and I remember bringing it up to my mom, and she goes, "You were 3 when you were when that was happening."
Wow,
so it's like,
that's awesome.
I was drawing back then. So it's always been a thing. It was just in school I was always the best artist, the best drawer, the best. Whenever anybody needed something drawn, they would come to me too. So that's always been my identity, growing up.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. Most creators kind of, I love that line. When anybody ever wanted something drawn, they kind of came to me.
Right. Well, I love the Zodi's, which became Gemco, right?
Gemco.
When Gemco,
became
Zodi's,
Target.
and then became Target. Yeah. So Gemco was where Atari first appeared in Gemcos, and you could play it for free, and people thought, what's this red stick and all that? So to be part of that era is kind of cool, and then to add comic books into it is awesome.
It's funny, real quick. It's funny you talk about that Gemco and G.I. Joe, because one of my core memories as a kid that I just love to talk about, because I talk about it all the time on Beyond Wednesdays. When I was a kid and Zartan first came out, I wanted that Zartan so bad, and I told my parents, okay, I want to save up all my allowance, and I want to work towards that Zartan, and I worked for, probably a month or 2 to get this Zartan toy, and we went to go to get the Zartan toy, and we couldn't find it anywhere, and finally my dad's like, okay, let's go to Gemco, and we went to Gemco, and that was where I got my first Zartan. It was just...
And see, I was mowing lawns at that time, and that was my summer money. And I found Zartan the week it came out, and I bought that. And then about a week later, my mom's like, hey, what's that G.I. Joe toy you just bought called? And I was like, why? And she's like, is it called Zartan? And I'm like, okay, my mom knows what a Zartan is. Something's up. And there was like a headline in the newspaper that they had recalled them because the file card had that he was a paranoid schizophrenic.
Yes.
And the Psychiatric Association said, hey, you can't make a bad guy paranoid schizophrenic. So they yanked it. And I'm like, and as a collector at that time, I was like, this is going to be valuable someday. So that was part of my origin story too.
Yeah. Good stuff, man. I love the G.I. Joe stuff. So,
I think I got Major Blood at Gemco. I remember that one specifically. We were there, and it's like Mom's was like, hey, pick something you want, and that was that was the figure that I chose that particular day.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so that's your origin story with collecting comics, But of course, the thing that I like to ask all creators when they first come on the show, I keep a running list of creators firsts, and I know that that's a tough thing to talk about for a lot of, especially artists, right? Because they don't want to talk about their first stuff and the first stuff they worked on. But I gotta ask, we need to know your first work, first cover, and was first Lady Mechanika that 0 issue? So start with your first work. What was the first work you ever did in comics?
The first published work was I was working for Top Cow, got hired in '93, and I was drawing this character that I created for myself. I called him Parrish. I wish I had that image, but I was drawing it. Mark came by, Silvestri. He goes, "What's that?" I go, "Oh, it's one of my characters." And at the time, I was scheduled to do a book called Weapon Zero.
Zero, yeah.
And it's like, he goes, "Oh, we can put it in the book." It's like, okay, it's like, so that particular image was printed in in Killer Instinct tour book. There's a Killer Instinct tour book, and that's the very first thing that was ever published that I drew. So that
let's see if we can find that here. Oh, here it is. Oh, look at this. Look at this. So this looks like a pretty cool book to find, because look at that. That is cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like and inside it had a little bio, like it was the first time that I was mentioned anything, and that was like an ad for Weapon Zero. After that, we did a book called The Art of Homage, that the studio at the time, Top Cow and Wildstorm, had a studio together. It's called Homage Studios. We were in Mira Mesa, California, and there was a bunch of young artists there: Brett Booth, J. Scott Campbell, Scotty Clark, Ryan Benjamin, Brandon Peterson. I don't know if Billy was there, Billy Tan, but this was early on. Finch hadn't joined the studio yet. He joined a year later. But we did a book called The Art of Homage, and that's where we did the Weapon Zero introduction. It was a 3-page story that I drew and Mark inked.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. Like my friend Dave Wexler, who has a Davengers, he has a YouTube channel here.
Love him.
Yeah, he bought one of the pages, and now he's on the hunt for the other 2.
Wow. That's the type of stuff that I love. Collecting and finding those early creator firsts are, it's a fun thing to hunt.
It's interesting. So just to follow up on that studio, would studios make sense in this day and age, or is that, because I know that was kind of like a bonding thing back in the day?
It's like when I masked, if I ever had any formal training, it's like I had probably the best training I think any comic book artist would. I know for me, it was the best that I could have gotten anywhere else. It's like I was getting paid to literally work with 4 of the top artists in the industry. It's like right there. I look to my left and there's Jim Lee working away on a page. Look to my right and there's Scott Williams and Mark Silvestri. Occasionally, Wills would kind of come in, but his office had Nick Manabat, you had J. Scott Campbell and Brett Booth, and it's like then Travis Charay comes in and David Finch, and so it's like working with these guys was so inspiring but also intense because you're competing with them. So there's this need to be better than you are. It's like you're like, someone brings in a piece and you're like, wow, that's amazing. And inside of you, for me, it's like, I need to destroy this. I need to be better than that. I need to be, I need to. And that's the thing. If you shoot for the top, you're going to get closer to the top. So you always aim for the best and try to outdo them. And that really pushed pushed me artistically.
Yeah.
And
that's
go ahead, Dennis.
That's one of the things that Stan always talked about with his bullpen, which is pretty much what the Image Studios kind of modeled after, which was by putting everybody in that room, it forced everybody to see the level that everybody else was performing at. And when Stan would come out, and he would rarely call someone out, but he would call out the opposite, like, who's doing the best work? This is the best work. And then everybody else had to kind of get up to that level.
Yeah, you don't want to humiliate someone, or that I don't think we had much of that. I think we were more of a we just looked at it and critiqued ourselves. Like, we would just look at some piece that came in and just, like, drool over it. Like, I mean, one of the best things was walking into Mark's space and seeing the whole issue laid out. Like, but it's just rough breakdowns of the figures, and your eye is connecting all these images, and you're like, there's so much energy there. That's just, it's so inspiring to see that. You look over Scott Williams and he's inking over a piece that Jim did, and it just, you see those lines transform into this beautiful, clean, crisp image. It was just so cool to work with these guys. But I always admit that before breaking in, I went in with a very big head, because in my world, I was the best. It's like what they talk about, those football players in high school, where they're the best and they have this big swelled head and ego, and then they go to college and everybody's the best high school player from their region, and then they go to the pros and everyone's the best college player. So it's like, now I'm in the pros and I'm working next to these guys that are the level was much higher than I realized. So I went in with this attitude. Like, when I went to Comic-Con in '93, I went in with that attitude. I had that attitude, like, I'm going to get hired because I'm the best. I'm king shit. Of course I'm going to get hired. And when I went there and I got three people or three companies that dug my work, I was like, of course, because I'm the best. But once I joined the studio, once I went into the first day that I actually joined the Mira Mesa Homage Studios, the first day I walk in, I'm looking around and I start looking at their work, like the actual work, because I wasn't paying attention. I went there to tour like a couple weeks before I moved there. So I didn't get a chance to look at their actual work, but now I'm there. I'm there for a year, and I'm looking at the quality of the art, and I'm comparing my work to theirs, and it's not at that professional level, and my stomach sunk. For the first time in my artistic life, I felt I didn't feel confident anymore. I felt like, instead of like making that fire, like, burn inside, I was like, oh fuck, I'm gonna get canned. I'm gonna get canned at any point. I'm gonna get fired. I mean, it's just, I'm not at that level. My line art isn't as crisp. Again, when people talk about the Image style or the house style, that's, there's a certain look. And when I went in, I had a much messier, style that wasn't crisp and clean. So comparing myself was, it was a bad thing for me to do, because it's like, instead of comparing myself, I should have just said, okay, let me just do what I'm doing and get better at it. But instead, I felt I needed to change and alter what I was doing to fit.
Yeah.
And I've said this, that I feel like I compromised at that point, that I felt like I had to change the animal or the artistic animal that I was, in order to fit in with this studio.
But how long from that moment, that seeking gut feeling, the imposter syndrome, as they call it now, to the point where you realized they're all doing it this way, but I have this inner style that I think I can get away with, and I think they'll like it, and then you pretty much just lean all the way into that for the rest of the career?
Not quite that. It was I think it's like a good 2-3 years later that I felt, okay, I'm I belong here. Like you know, I'm doing the kind of work that's better than a huge percentage of what's out there. I'm seeing professional stuff from Marvel and DC, and it's kind of like, well, my stuff is up to snuff. I think you know, I'm at that level at least. It's like, I wouldn't say, you know, like the top, you know, cream of the crop, but I felt like I was, well, you know, I had certain artists, and I'm not going to mention, but at the time I was like, well, I'm better than that guy. Well, I'm a little, I'm not as good as that person, but I'm better than that guy. Or, okay, you know, this guy is really huge, but it's like the work that they're putting out, it's not as up to snuff in, you know, from my perspective, but it's like, I never got comfortable doing the style that I broke in with. So it's like the style that I'm doing now, it's morphed into whatever it is, because just like anything, you know, you start incorporating this guy or that guy or this artist and that artist, and then it just morphs into a different animal. And sometimes I'm okay with it. Sometimes I'm like, I kind of want to go back to something that gave me that pleasure when I first broke in, you know. So a lot of times it's like, it becomes very tedious to do the kind of work that I feel I need to in order to make it look professional, when I feel like I can just have more fun if I'm a little looser and don't care as much. Like there's artists out there that are so precise with their line and so clean, and I love it. But anytime I try to do that, it's just it's like pulling teeth, because every line needs to be perfect. And I've gotten now, I'm letting things go now. Now it's like when I do something, I'm like, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be done. It's like if you know, the point of a storyteller is to tell a story. Like, it's cool to, you know, spend 3, 4, 5 months on a book, but at the end of the day, it's like, you know, my core purpose with the books is to tell a story. So if I can tell a story, it doesn't matter if it's, you know, if every hair is perfectly aligned or every line is perfectly clean. It's as long as you can tell. Like, I like that a Todd McFarlane line: if it looks like a tree, it's a tree, move on. You know, like it's
well, no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, it's just like,
it's I was watching. Have you watched that Dave Stevens documentary yet?
I have not.
It's amazing. I think it's on Amazon Prime.
That's a new one, right?
It. Yeah. The one that they kickstarted. It's brilliant. Okay. But one of the things that just, you know, they talked to 2 of the publishers that discovered Dave and then went bankrupt, got bought. Then they waited for Dave. And I just can't help but, you know, like, at some point, if Dave had been a little less critical of his own work, we would have had double the amount of work out of Dave when we had it. And, you know,
No, there's a lot of artists like that. There's a lot of artists that, I think there's something that, again, I attribute to Travis Charest, that when we were working in the early 90s, mid 90s, someone mentioned that he said something to the effect, in 10 years, people are not going to care about how long it took you. They're just going to look at the art. So it's like that kind of resonated early on, like, okay, we got to make it perfect. You know, maybe, again, he probably didn't say it, but it was something that someone attributed to him saying. And it's just like, you know, he was one of the guys that had that perfect line art. You know, he could draw anything and it's perfectly rendered. It's just beautifully done, super clean. And but anytime you know, notoriously people would say, you know, it would take forever to do a book. You know, it's like, but, you know, I talked to him at, Como the year before. And I mentioned something like, he was drawing a commission and he was doing it really fast. And I go, hey man, you shouldn't do that, because you're going to mess up your reputation of taking forever on a piece. And he's like, I can draw fast. It's just I don't draw like I just don't. I take too long. Like basically, it's like procrastinates and stuff.
Yeah.
But once he gets into it, he can knock something out really fast.
A lot of the creatives that I know. A lot of the creatives that I know, like whether it's artists, musicians, content creators, movie producers, stuff like that, they have that same type of thing that you're talking about, where it's got to be perfect for them. They'll sit behind the editing, tools or machines and edit forever, and they have to have somebody to tell them to kind of stop. Which is very interesting. That's you hear that from
if I could redo some, like there are pieces that or stories that I just want to go back and make it better, and you always have that desire. But then I remember this study that they got two groups. One was asked or tasked to do the perfect cup. They were ceramics, and the other group was tasked to do as many cups or pieces as they could within the time frame. So at the end of the day, the judges looked at the people. The best cups came from the people that just kept doing a whole bunch and just having fun with it. The people that tried to do the perfect cup kind of failed because, again, they didn't get as many done, and they were so concerned about getting it perfect that it didn't it just didn't come out right.
They're probably worried about it, and they weren't in that flow state, right? That
you get in your head.
Yeah.
It's like that's a lot of things that when I tell young artists sometimes, or even some of the friends, it's like, get yourself out of your own head. That's a lot of times you're your own worst enemy. Yeah. It's like getting that negative mindset, and it's like for instance, I was always concerned about inking because, again, I didn't have the clean art style, and it came from when I started inking myself early on, and the people that were criticizing me were, of course, inkers. They were like, the stuff that I was inking looked very scratchy and very thin lined, and I was just sort of working it out, but from their eyes it looked very unprofessional. So I stopped, and I got very I lost confidence in doing that. But I have always wanted to be, or I wanted to be, a full pencil and ink guy.
Yeah.
And and it isn't until recently that I took that on again. But at the time it was if it's not going to be perfect, why am I even going to attempt it? But now it's like I'm just having fun with the art.
Well,
cool. Brian, let me ask a follow-up question real fast. So I want to go back to the studio life because I've never asked someone this. Tell us about the actual studio life. Forget about the art part of it. Is it who gets in first? Who stays in the latest? Is there morning meetings? How does that life work?
Well, there's different stages of, we've got the Homage studios, which was, I guess it's like there was some similarities to the Top Cow studios. Homage, we were in Mira Mesa for a year, and then we moved, Top Cow moved to Santa Monica and then established, our own studio there. For the most part, most of the guys worked late night. We would come in evening, probably 5, 6, 7, 8, and work all night. There were some people that would come in the, most of the production came in the morning, did the whole 9 to 5 thing. Most of the editorial did as well. But the artists are, we would always come in late, and we'd put music on, chat, and watch TV and work. At the time at Mira Mesa, we had a ping pong table, so there was always ping pong stuff, ping pong tournaments. I got hit with the ping pong quite a bit because my table was the ping pong table was right behind me.
Right.
There was a lot of. See, the thing is, it's like when I was in high school, And well, right after high school, it's like my friends and I, we lived in LA, so we used to travel down to TJ and party there because you could drink.
Sure.
You know, you were 18, 19,
Yeah.
and even 16, 17, they kind of didn't care. You could kind of get away with it. So when I moved to Mira Mesa, which was just half an hour away from TJ, I kind of assumed I was going to have like a whole bunch of like-minded dudes or party people, but that wasn't the case. They were more concerned about doing the work, and
that's a good thing.
So it's like there wasn't as much partying. I think it was actually the second generation of the Wildstorm crew had a lot of that going on, and I used to drive down to San Diego and hang out with those guys.
It's interesting because that whole studio life has just not completely vanished, but it's basically vanished because of how the industry is now. Everything's, through email scanning, it's this whole new technology aspect. And do you think that's a detriment, or do you think that's good usually it's a little bit of both. It's like nuance, it's like a little gray area. But, I always like to ask, you guys who spent time in that studio life, what you think of it nowadays.
Well, there was, I consider it my best year. It was just the most, as far as feeling the freest and most creative, or it just felt very, I guess it's the equivalent of leaving home when you go to college or something for others. It's just, for me, like I remember when I got the phone call that, hey, do you want to move down to Mira Mesa and join Homage and Top Cow Studios? I was like, fuck yeah. Like it was so freeing. I actually had a dream that night where I was running around naked. Like it just felt this feeling of, oh man, I'm free. Like I don't have to go 9 to 5 anymore at this mom and pop shop that I was working at. I'm actually going to be a professional comic book artist. And I'm going to be working with, people that I admire. Like I look up to these guys. Like, it's like at Comic-Con, I got 3 bites. It was actually Top Cow, Wildstorm, and DC. And from what I hear is that Wildstorm, that Top Cow saw me first, so that's why Mark had first dibs. And DC gave me a call a month after I joined Homage. It was Denny O'Neil or the Office of, and I was offered a Batman book. I don't know which one, but at the time I'm like, I'm where I want to be. This is 1993, and it's like I'm working with the best guys in my perspective, my perception of, in my opinion, the best guys in the industry.
Do you want to tour with one of the greatest rock and roll bands ever, or do you want to be a studio musician?
Well, it's like, yeah, it's like I want to learn. This is Image was it for me. Like there was no other. Image was the pinnacle at that point in the comic book industry. That was it. Like you couldn't get any bigger, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I was, I had to turn that down, and that I often think about that. Like I wonder what kind of artist I would have been, because I would have been a lot rougher. I wouldn't have been as polished, and I wouldn't have learned a lot of the things that I learned working with those guys. So
yeah,
it would have been a completely different, or would have, I guess I'd be in a different, place in my life, I think.
Yeah. I kind of already told you about one book that, being a big G.I. Joe fan, your work on the G.I. Joe Volume 2 stuff at Image and Devil's Due was just fantastic for me. And I talk about this cover all the time. This Firefly cover is just fantastic. And it's just an instant shot of nostalgia to me. But also this Bat cover, the Battle Android cover, was just excellent. And I remember seeing these two issues and just absolutely... I mean, what a time period for G.I. Joe fans to have you working over there doing doing art, you had Turner doing cover art, you had J. Scott Campbell doing cover art, you had, I mean, just this murderer's row of artists doing just amazing covers over there. And then, you know, you talked about maybe not getting that start at DC, but this cover, this Supergirl cover, is like the fan freaking tastic, man.
Thank you.
These 3 issues to me, and we'll get into the 4th that really kind of put my eye on Joe Benitez, and you know, obviously I knew of your work in the early stuff, in the early Image stuff, but this is the stuff that really killed it for me. Talk about working on the G.I. Joe stuff during that time period. What was that like?
It was again when Josh Blaylock approached me. It's like you know, I'm a big G.I. Joe fan, as I've said. So the opportunity to draw them was a bonus. You know, it's like I've always enjoyed, it was fun to do my take on the characters. You know, it's like the thing is, again, I was trying to emulate Michael Golden when I was doing that. So. But yeah, I mean, I think I've gotten quite a bit of response for the battle files.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, like I did like 5 or 6 of those, and those I still get people hitting me up. One asking for the original art, but also like giving me props for how they like some of the characters that I did in that.
Those battle file issues were very interesting, and that brings me to another thing. Like something that I love finding and searching out for artists is some of those things like the secret file stuff that DC does, the origin issues, and one that you did that I absolutely loved was when DC the 52 stuff was going on, not the new 52, but the week 52, and this Starfire work was fantastic too, man.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah,
super cool. And again, here you are at DC. It's this big, you know, it's the big publisher. And I know that you looked at Image that way, but what was it like jumping over to, you know, DC Comics and doing work for DC Comics too at that time?
It's a little bittersweet, I guess. It's like, the thing is, I was working at Wildstorm, or I was publishing my creator-owned this book called Wraithborn through Wildstorm, and it didn't sell as well for them. Like the thing is, the numbers, if I was selling them now, the numbers are 3 times as much as what Mechanika sells. But because it was Wildstorm / DC, the numbers weren't up to snuff. So it's like we were supposed to do an 8-issue arc, and they kind of made us cut it down to 6 because, again, the numbers wouldn't support it. So we condensed the story, and then I was hit up by Jim about possibly taking over Batman after him, and I was like, "Fuck yeah!" Like so he calls me up and goes, "Hey, how would you like to take over Batman after I leave it?" It's like, "Fuck yeah, let's do that." It's like, so that was the initial, like, okay, you know, like, let's do that. But then as the contract got closer, it kind of took a while. Then it's like, well, not Batman, because we gave that to Dustin. Mm-hmm. So what about Superman Batman? Would you like to take over after Ethan does his run? And it's like, fuck yeah, let's do that. So then they gave me I signed a contract. They gave me a story. The thing is, the story that I got was female centric. It's like, it wasn't Superman, Batman. It was Supergirl, Batwoman, and they're fighting the female Parasite and Poison Ivy. But it's like the story. The thing is, I did a few things without asking. Like there was a splash shot of Poison Ivy with the reveal. You know, it's a reveal of Poison Ivy. And I thought that would be a really good spot to do a double page splash. So I did one of those, you know, and a lot of people don't like that. I didn't ask, I just did it. And the writer didn't like it. He felt it was too imagey. And it's like, and everybody else thought it was okay, but it's like, I guess he thought it was too pin-up-y and it distracted from the story. And I guess there's a lot of writers who didn't like that approach. And I was like, well, it is Imagey because I'm Imagey. That's kind of,
Right.
I assumed that's kind of why they put me on this particular book, because this is what I kind of do. But because I didn't, because in the story it asked for a 1-page splash, I was like, all right, I'll just do the 1 page. But that, we had some other issues with like there was this thing about well, anyways, it's like suffice to say, the story never.
Hold on.
We just hit it.
Let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, unfiltered time.
Yo,
Hold on.
I know of this information. Wouldn't you agree?
Our favorite part of the show, we hit it.
Joe, let's dive in on this because this is kind of important. And I mean,
editors telling you or writers telling you, yeah, for sure.
No, it's like in the story, it was asked to do a Kryptonian flower, the most beautiful flower or some shit like that. You know, it's like, so I was looking up, I was trying to find something that looked alien, and I found this interesting alien water lily. So I kind of incorporated it and I drew it, and it was like 5 or 6 pages of this stupid flower on there. And it's like, you know, I'm moving on, and then I get the editor calls me up. It's like, yeah, the writer doesn't like it. It's like, what do you mean? Well, he doesn't think it's beautiful enough. And I go, well, okay, well, have the writer send me what he thinks is beautiful. Like, just send me the ref and I'll switch it up. So I erased all the flowers and I got I think a rose, and I got like maybe 4 or 5 flowers. And the only instructions was, he doesn't care what it looks like as long as it's beautiful. And that right there, I was like, well, how the fuck am I supposed to know what you consider beautiful and what I consider beautiful? It's kind of like, who's to say that what I already drew I didn't consider beautiful? It's just like, that frustrated me because I'm like, I can't read this guy's fucking mind. How am I supposed to incorporate his aesthetic into this? Like, I was trying to work with it, but
it's one of the stories we hear all the time. Sorry to interrupt you, but the concept between the writer and the artist is that they're working to make one vision. Right. But there's this whole crop of writers who really think that their word is gospel and you're just coming up with their vision on a thing. It's like, no, it has to be equally both of your visions. And this is like a perfect example of that. Right.
I mean, like, I know when Alan Moore writes a story, he does breakdowns. Slayhammer, I worked over I worked over a couple of stories with him, but also, you know, he'll do some breakdowns. So you kind of get an idea of what they want. With this, it was just kind of like, well, this is what, you know, do this. And it's like, so the thing is, it was a different experience because I came from Image and Top Cow, where I pretty much was, I was left with my own devices. I could do whatever I wanted, essentially. It's like, it's kind of like when we're doing a story, I had a lot of input into the stories that we were doing. It's kind of like, hey, is this, you know, like, can we do this? Can we do that? You know? So I was kind of spoiled with that, in, you know, that kind of approach. So when I'm, you know, working with a structured corporate company and I'm trying to, you know, infuse my ideas, and you're getting the vibe like, oh, that's nice, but can you just draw the pages that, you know, that you're given? It really changed my changed how I felt about working with them, because it's like, then it became like, oh shit, this is just a gig, you know, I'm just hired to draw. And my attitude was, my perspective changed, and I just didn't feel as it just wasn't as much fun. And the thing is, it's like, the reason I signed a contract with DC was to get on a series, because in my head I was like, I don't care what you give me, I'm going to destroy, I'm going to kick ass on it. I'm just going to make it amazing. From my perspective, you know, that's how I was approaching it. I didn't care what book. It was kind of like I had that mindset like Rob with New Mutants. It's kind of like the guy just got a book and fucking destroyed. You know, it doesn't need to be a big book. It's like I just need a book and I could showcase what I can do with it. But after that, they put me on a fill-in after I guess Ethan was late on Superman Batman, so it's like, okay, I'm finishing off that story. Then this fill-in and that fill-in. I mean, I did like the fact that I worked on a Paul Dini Detective Comics.
Yes.
So that was fun.
Wow.
But it's like I still had that. I need a series. I want a series because I want to put in my 2 cents. I want to show the.
Well, even that Paul Dini Detective, wasn't that a fill-in for Grant's Gap books? So even that wasn't a commitment. You know, that wasn't DC giving you a commitment.
Right. It was. The thing is that I realized after the fact, Image guys in general, we all had a very a reputation of being late, and it's like I mean, Dave Finch, you know, even I think even Mike too. I don't know if Mike had to prove himself, but I know Dave Finch, you know, they started him at this, you know, like little fill-ins here, and I think he did The Call, and it's like you didn't get a big book for like a year or two, you know. And Billy Tan, same thing. It's like once he joined Marvel, it's like it was just this fill-in and that fill-in, and then boom, they give him a series. So I realized that maybe that's where their mindset was at. Maybe, you know, they just didn't have the confidence that I could produce on a timely manner. So I kind of understood that, but it still didn't take away that I just didn't enjoy the process anymore, you know. And it's like, so they did give me Titans, and that was 4 issues. I was taking over for Ian Churchill because I guess he injured himself or something. But they'd established the look of the book already, and they asked me to try to match it. So that was a bit of a strain to have to match someone else's approach, you know, and it wasn't my aesthetic. Like, you know, like if someone gives me a book, I'd ask if I can alter the look and try to redesign the characters so they meet my my aesthetic and approach. So I had that talk with the Dio about that, and he was like, "Yeah, sure, man. It's like we'll do this run for, you know, do it like this for, and then at some point we'll do what you want to do." And it's like, but again, for whatever reason, it's like I got pushed off that book, and then my contract came up, and I was like, you know, do I really want to sign for another 2 years with a company that I just don't feel? It's just, it's not, the thing is, it's like, I had this conversation with, of all people, Michael Golden at a show, and I was complaining about this. I was saying this exact same shit, bitching about it. And he actually, he was like, and I was like, yeah, I wanted to get on a series, but they gave me, you know, all these different fill-ins. And he was like, oh, that's awesome. You get to draw all these different characters. And I never thought of it like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I had a really bad, you know, arrogant attitude about it. It's like, it's kind of like I want to come in and just bulldoze, and they weren't allowing me to bulldoze. And I you know, and but what I should have done is bulldoze the things that they did give me.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I feel like there's some that I did okay with, and some that I feel like I just didn't put in 100%. And the thing is, I allowed that. I allowed my experience there to kind of tarnish the rest of my career, because it's, you know, for a long time I wasn't putting in 100%. I still feel I don't put in 100%. It just felt like something, I compromised so much during that I just feel like, you know, I didn't feel the same again, you know.
I think that's your internal perspective, but I mean, the work that came right after that, I mean, that's 100%, my friend.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's talk about this, because I'll be honest, I agree with Dennis. For a lot of artists, creators, comic book creators, the goal, especially nowadays, is to create your own IP. and to put all your effort behind that, and especially with the Lady Mechanika stuff, you knocked it out of the box right from the beginning. Talk about Lady Mechanika and where that came from and everything.
Well, I guess it's like the connecting aspect of after DC. I'm really good friends with the Aspen guys. I mean, we all started at Top Cow. Mike Turner branched out, and we were going to New York at the same time, and we were having a conversation, and I was bitching again about having to about the whole DC experience, and it's like Mike just passed away, like he just passed away. It was June. June 27th, I think.
2008 or 9, I can't remember.
Yeah, 2008, I believe. This was, I think, New York, so this was a few months later, and I was having that conversation that, I don't think I'm going to re-sign with them because I just don't feel it. And a month or two later, they approached me about taking over and finishing up Soulfire because Mike never got a chance to finish it. So it was 2 issues. I think half of 8, 9, and 10. I believe that's the right amount or the right books. So I did that, and then they asked me if I was interested in doing a creator own with them, and I had a handful of ideas, and it's like. I had this one. The steampunk thing happened in 2009. I always bring this up. It's like we were at Dragon Con 2009, and I was hanging out with these people, and I was looking around, and it's like they had a big steampunk contingency. A lot of cosplayers, a lot of steampunk cosplayers, and if you're at a con, there are noise, just like Klingons and stormtroopers. They're just background noise. It's like you see them, it's like, oh, they're cool, but I never really paid much attention until that show, and I was looking at them, and I was really intrigued by how cool the outfits were and how much passion these creators, like you would approach them and I'm Captain so-and-so, and this is my backstory. Oh, I'm Madam so-and-so, and it's like they would really get into it and really bring that aspect of their character alive. And I just thought that's really cool. That would make an interesting story. And at the time, I think the only book that really dealt with Victorian steampunk was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen I knew of.
Yep.
So, and I was like, there's something there. So that became one of the ideas that I had in the back burner. Like, okay, I'm going to have to develop this. And I actually started developing it for my friend, because I didn't want to draw all the gears and the, airships and all the, Victorian stuff. It's like, I was like, I just like drawing, cool looking badass characters, and all that stuff is kind of like,
tedious.
It's nice and all, but it's tedious. Exactly. It's just like, I don't know if I want to commit myself to a book that's going to have that. So I started developing the book that was closer to his aesthetics, and actually, again, we ended up working together on the book. He's Martin Montiel, and he does a lot of the backgrounds now for me on the book. And we teamed up on Volume 2, The Tablet of Destinies, and he finished the book. So I did the layouts on that, but talking to Aspen, we were discussing what to do, and I had this other idea, this space opera, or this little story about this little 6-year-old samurai kid, and I was like, that's where I was leaning towards. And I also have my steampunk book. That's what I told him. We went to MegaCon, Peter and I, Peter Steigerwald, and again saw a big contingency of steampunkers, and I was like, I feel like there's something here that I need to play around with. I need to bring something. And that's when I went back and I told him, hey, I think I'm going to do that steampunk thing. Like, and that's when I started developing it a little more and fleshing it out.
we talked about it while we were not live and thought we were live.
Yeah.
But right at the exact same time, I was witnessing the same thing you were witnessing. I'm like, there is something about this steampunk thing that is emerging. And so I decided to vend at a 2010 show. And I realized, oh, the crossover between the comic community and the steampunk community is huge. Mainly because of the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And I said, okay, I'm going to add, and then right at that time, Aspen Previews has this Lady Mechanika, and I'm like, holy shit. I don't know who, I know I've heard the name Benitez, but I have not really, invested in this. But this was the perfect comic at the perfect time for me as a retailer, for me to go all in on. Mm-hmm. And at that time, Chris Roop was, obviously connected to Aspen, and he was encouraging me and like, oh yeah, you get this stuff, you're going to get this and this and this. And I'm like, okay, I'm in. And I mixed it with my product mix, Rocketeer, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, all this stuff just had these steampunk aesthetics that I could see was going to be a market. And sure enough, we bought in and people were coming for an hour away from us because we had a product that no one else had in the area.
Yeah, it's like I kind of knew we had something. Actually, coming back from San Diego Comic-Con that year in 2010, I stopped at this shop. I think it's called Beach Ball in OC.
Yeah,
and and I was perusing. Again, you go to a comic con and I neglect to actually buy comics, the whole time I'm there. So I stopped by and and this girl came by went to the clerk and asked for Lady Mechanika. And there was a book called Lady Robotica out at the same time. So she's asking for Lady Mechanika.
Oh, that's Bill Morrison.
Right. So it's like, and the clerk is, the teller is like, you mean Lady Robotica, right? No, Lady Mechanika. It's like, and that's, I jumped in. It's like, oh no, it's not out till October.
That had to be
it's not out till October. And they're like, yeah, that's my book. It's like, oh, okay. So it was an interesting moment that the book isn't out and someone's already asking for a preview of it or to reserve it. And so that, felt, okay, maybe we're on the right track. And the first day the book sold out. And I think the thing with those three Aspen books, 0, 1, 2, and 3, they were selling better every one. Like 0, 1 outsold, 2 outsold 1, and 3 outsold 2. And then I stopped because I had kind of like I had some issues going on at home, and things just kind of like my creative head kind of got into it just locked down, and I couldn't finish the book. And it took me a while to finally dislodge from that mindset. And, it was a year later, a year and a half, or maybe 2 years later, that we finally were able to get book 4 and 5 completed and finish out the story.
What's it like being somebody like yourself? Because, clearly you're a perfectionist. Clearly, you are at the top of your game, I think, at that point in time. What was it you couldn't, I'm not asking for the specifics, but what was it you had to do to clear your head and realize your contribution and how big it was, to get back on that horse and ride it,
It's just like, it felt like, I was stuck in a loop.
Yep.
Where it's like every day was the same. Kind of happened again during COVID. It's like I would do the exact same routine, but none of it included actually working. Yeah. And the thing is, the other issue too, it's like the Lady Mechanika story, it was Star Wars in my head. Like, we're going to have this big, blowing up of the Death Star at the end of Mechanika. And it wasn't until my writing partner, Marcia, when she jumped in and said, well, all you need to do to finish the story is there's this mystery in there where you have this mechanical girl that's found. She goes, all you have to do is just finish that off and the story's over. And then you could move that whole explosion of the Death Star to some future story. When she said that, it's like, oh, okay. So basically, I didn't know how to end the story.
Yeah.
I was going in loops, and it's like, because I didn't know how to dislodge from that, it's like I needed a different perspective to be able to, fix the story. Because honestly, I was making it up as I went. Like, it's like I had this whole, like, the issue 0, I was calling it the Gentleman Ripper. Like, it was going to be basically Lady Mechanika fights Jack the Ripper. And then Marcia, my writing partner, she's actually like, isn't that kind of been done?
Mm-hmm.
It's been there, done that. And then
From hell.
Yeah. But it's like, I just went, it's Victorian, Jack the Ripper, let's do that. But it was the whole, like, the one thing she brought up was like, you want villains that aren't villains. Basically, it's like a character that you can sympathize with, empathize with, and you kind of understand, and you can kind of see their perspective, and you don't have that whole mwahaha, I'm a bad guy. And so once I had that perspective, it's kind of like she actually broke down a story, like an outline, and I kind of tweaked it, and we kind of went back and forth, and that's essentially what issue 0 was. But I still wanted to just do it myself, so I kept trying to incorporate the stuff myself, and she was kind of like hands off until we got to a point where it's like, okay, I kind of need some perspective, because and the thing is, that's what we realized. I'm the idea guy. I can kind of come up with ideas and scenes, but a lot of times I struggle to put them together, to make them logically make sense. So I'm very abstract. I'm very emotional with this stuff. With Mechanika, or with the first arc, there was a sequence where Mechanika ends up at the circus and she fights these vampire clowns, because I was going to make the whole circus vampires. But so she's, the scene's there, and Mechanika shows up and she fights these vampire clowns, and Marsha's like, why? And I was like, what do you mean why? Because it's cool.
Yeah.
It's like, no, but why do you have these vampires fighting Mechanika? I was like, because it's cool. Because it's cool. She goes there. It's like, no, but why in the fucking story? Well, she didn't say, but why in the story? How does this make sense in the story that you're telling? It's like, I don't know. It's cool. It's like, she goes there and they're vampires. It's like, so I wasn't thinking logically. I was just thinking like, let's put that cool scene in there. And we took it out. At the end of the day, I didn't go that route. That reminds me too, that how I kind of just had very low respect for writers until I started writing myself.
Yep.
And then I realized how, because it's like I came from the school of, doesn't matter what you write, I'm just gonna kick ass on it. I don't care what it is. I'm gonna make it really look cool. So it doesn't matter. Just give me whatever. I'll make it work. And I realized that's like, no, there's a whole art form to writing and the whole approach that I just didn't see. And once that happened, it's like I had 100% so much more respect. Yes. And really felt bad that this whole time I was shitting on them, because it's
that's the best way to learn.
It was a whole
that's the best way to learn. You know what I mean? Like when you have to do it yourself, you kind of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, somebody else's, and you're being forced to, because you're at an impasse, right? You're at a whatever it is, a funk or a roadblock, and when you have to learn that way, it's so much easier than just banging your head against a wall constantly.
Well, it's when you see someone's, it's good to have a different perspective, and that's the thing with Marcia. We have a pretty good creative team, because it's like she fills in those parts that I lack, and I fill in those parts that she lacks, where it's like we can kind of see, and it's like she can do a story that's very A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like very straightforward, and then I come in with a bit of chaos. Like I'll say, well, let's go this way. Well, what about like out of the box kind of thinking. And I feel it's the thing is, it's like we kind of feel like the best way to do it is I'll come up with a story and make it just whatever. Let's just come up with things, and then she'll take it and kind of wrangle it in and make sense. But a lot of times I feel like, it removes some of the spice, some of that, like the guitar solos or the drum beat, like I think of it as songs, and it's like it's taking away of what was making the song magic in my head. But it's a lot of times you're just putting a bunch of notes and a bunch of riffs and a bunch of choruses, but you're not making a song. You're not putting it all together, so it feeds into the next scene, and the book just has a much more melodic element to it.
Yeah.
Well, does that lead us to your current project?
Well, before we get into the current project, there's a couple things I want to ask about. Right, you guys, we're showing some of the exclusives that Joe did with Jesse.
Yeah, variants from the past.
Oh, these are absolutely beautiful, man.
Yeah, I remember calling Joe on this and saying, I love your book. And this is when you had the gap where there was nothing. And I'm like, we got to get something out. And you sent these two to me, and I think we did like $250 each. We had virgin covers and dress covers, sold out in a week. And people really enjoyed this project because it was just something different at the counter. Walking up and seeing superheroes and action heroes. And
you got two great young artists at the time, DeBalfo and Jamie Tyndall, that have just really taken off recently.
Beautiful pieces.
Oh yeah. Gorgeous.
And again, I love the depiction they both did. Like, Mike really kicked ass on that.
What is it like working with other artists when they're working on your baby or your character? What is that like?
Well, like that's the reason. Well, Mechanika, it was always supposed to be a miniseries that I drew, and then I would hand it off to a new artist or a different creative team, and they would take over. And my goal was always to put out a new IP every year, like doing the whole Mark Millar, thing. Just I have all these IPs that I want to get out. Like you mentioned before, why do the or one of you guys mentioned about doing the creator-owned thing, and basically it's like I was, I think, 35 around then, and I realized I'm going to be 50 in 15 years. I can't rely on royalties. Am I going to have to work until I'm 60? And who's going to take care of me? There's nobody who's going to take care of me. DC's not, Marvel's not, Image is not. It's like I'm not getting like these big checks that some of these guys get for working on big, event books. So it's like I really needed to focus on doing something that, instead of doing Spider-Man, I need to create my own Spider-Man, my own Batman that I can exploit and do whatever I want with, that will hopefully take care of me, when I get a little older, and, if I can't, that hopefully these things will live on after me, or,
they'll flower, they'll bloom.
So that said, when I did Mechanika, the whole point, that's why it's like, whatchamacallit, the volume 2, we had Martin Montiel, and, I was laying it out. So that was my way of kind of like, okay, I'll just lay it out, have him finish it. But then what do? I go in and start reworking some stuff.
Right, sure.
So then it's kind of, then we realized, well, I can kind of get a really good look if we kind of like, I'll take the brunt of it, and you hook up the backgrounds and stuff. And then it's like, but I couldn't let it go because I felt we hadn't established the world yet. And it's like now, I think it was with Brian Ching, I finally was kind of hands off. He did the bulk of the story. I still ended up doing a little flashback sequence. But it was still difficult to let someone else take over, because it's like the aesthetic is slightly different, and it's like, it's kind of like, well, I could do this or I could do that, or I'd like her to look more like this, or that scene to look more like that. But I was like, no, I need to let go, because I can't do this. I can't do this for the rest of my life, like being so micromanaging. So I was kind of hands off. And again, it's like, once the story's done, it's like, oh, it came out really good. And so that leads to the book that we're doing now, where I just kind of went completely hands off. There's a few art directions here and there, and it's primarily just with story elements. Like, we have something specific, and it's kind of like, okay, can we tweak it? But yeah, I mean, letting go is very difficult. But I mean, the whole goal with Mechanika was to be a mini that I could branch out and give to someone else,
Yeah, yeah.
What I love about this Kickstarter right off the bat is, look at what his pledge goal was, 25,000. You see, what this trick is, Joe, Dennis, right? People put $500, right? $1,500. Why? Because they could say, oh, I'm up 9,600%. To have a true goal of 25,000 up, that's very, very genius there.
Well, it's like, I think, I mean, I got to give a lot of credit to Polito.
Yeah.
Because it's like everything, the page looks the way it does because we pretty much did beat by beat what he does, because he is pretty much the pinnacle of Kickstarter comics. I have so much respect for what Brian's done, and it's just like, if you're gonna do something, look at what the best do, and that's what he does. So it's like, we were like, okay, let's follow the blueprint and see where we can change it. So it looks,
30 years is a pretty good track record to follow,
right?
Yes.
So it's like, so yeah, I mean, we try to make it as aesthetically pleasing and has our sensibilities as much as possible. But yeah, it's like, yeah.
What's it like? You kind of hit on, there's some people out there that really kind of set the playbook on how to kind of do these crowdfunding efforts. Brian Polito, a big one. I know Ethan's kind of really jumped into that in a big way. A lot of, Billy Tucci, a lot of these guys over there that in Comicsgate that have really kind of curated this crowdfunding effort. And we talk a lot about crowdfunding over here, and how it's also another one of those things that's really nuanced, and it has, those gray areas. Like, it might not be the greatest thing for brick and mortar comic shops, but for comic books, the growth of comic books, the growth of the medium, creators can really work in a different way, and it's very positive in how they can create their IPs using crowdfunding. What was your thought first going into crowdfunding?
Again, a little tentative about it. We didn't know if it would work out. One of the things that Brian, one of the biggest or best advice he was saying, your newsletter, get people to sign on to that, because it's like, that's your lifeblood right there. Those guys, those people that sign up, they're going to be, yeah. And I think, again, when you look at, like what Ethan or what Eric July have done, it's like, they had their people that follow them, and they incorporate that into their crowdfunding, and that's what we did. Everybody has their followers, and it's like they get their people to help them along, and that's great. Do their thing.
Yeah, for sure. I think that especially now with how we're seeing the changes in crowdfunding, and you got these different platforms to use, and then it's become such a big part of comic books that you start seeing the publishers jumping in, right? Skybound with the G.I. Joe compendium.
Right.
Nick over at Dynamite, Nick Brucci is constantly doing these amazing crowdfunding efforts. Ross Ritchie
with Berserker.
Yeah, with Berserker. That's been an amazing thing to see to finally see these publishers start jumping in, and maybe at some point, hint, hint, these distribution companies will start. We hear rumblings with the Jeppies, and we hear other things that maybe we might try to find some sort of like thing in between to get some of these into retailers' hands a little bit easier. Yeah, because it seems like it could be rough. Do you have any ideas on how to do that? Do you think about that any way of how to get maybe creating a retailer type platform? Not platform. What do they call those?
Incentive.
Incentive. Yeah.
Well, I know that we've gotten the critique that we've gotten comes mostly from retailers because some feel it takes away from. At the end of the day, it's kind of like, hey, why are they going to order the book? And yeah, that this takes away some of the market, and it's like, and I want to find a way to incorporate the retailers into that, I don't know why we haven't done it. Like, I know there's a reason, but doing like a retailer exclusive, or finding a way, like, doing what is it, variant covers for retailers, like, where it's like kind of like what Image does, where it's like a retailer can get their own cover, but they have to order a certain amount, and the price point is obviously lowered to incentivize the sale and whatnot. So it's like the other thing. It would help, like what Jesse was saying, with having a place that would help do the fulfillment. Probably would make it a lot easier for some of these creators to do that. It's like right now we're able to handle it, but if we had like the numbers that some of these other creators have gotten, where it's like you got 10,000 copies of a book or orders. Yeah, that's something that I don't know if we could handle on our own. And, obviously it's like, we're not there yet, but we're hoping that at some point we could get to that level. But yeah, I know I've talked to some friends, some artist friends who've done campaigns, and we've discussed possibly doing some sort of, or the idea is nothing official, but having some sort of what do you call it?
Tier
collaboration. Yeah. Like, we all do covers for each other, for instance, like, or we all, like, it's like, okay, this month is so-and-so's Kickstarter, where all of us, we're going to, bombard our people to let them know, hey, this is a new story. This is Joe's story. This is so-and-so's story. And it's like, and we all have, we mutually help each other, push each other, kind of like again, like kind of like what Image did to some extent, but really integral with each other. But again, there's a lot of different personalities. There's a lot of different work ethics. There's the issue that always pops up. It's like, okay, let's say I do a cover for someone, who's to say that they're going to reciprocate that because of their schedule or whatever.
Sure.
So then it's like you lose out, or you can't be dependent on someone else's, productivity. Like, that's the reason.
Well, no, I was just curious. Jay Scott was no slouch when he agreed to do this. And Tan, here's the thing. You've worked with so many people that just a simple, call and you get 2 banger covers out of these guys.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's just that relationship. And everybody loves you. I haven't heard a single person on the circuit ever say a bad word about you.
Oh my Lord, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Hey, Joe, is it doing crowdfunding now that you're doing crowdfunding? Are conventions distractions for you, or are they necessary for you?
It's like there's we've actually had this conversation where we're leaning towards cutting cons altogether at some point, because it's like
Wow.
the expense is just ridiculous. I mean,
Yes.
San Diego alone, with travel, with we're looking at 5-6 G's in the hole before you get in, and it's just like, wow, we got to sell that much just to break even. And in some other shows, if you go to New York or Dragon Con, unless the con is willing to book you a spot to stay in, the hotels alone, we're looking at what, 3 bills a night.
Yeah.
Even
It's just
more.
it adds up.
Yeah.
And if you have other, if you have multiple people and you can't all stay in one room, it's like, it just, so it's like, it's a business, obviously, but it's like, I think with COVID, when it happened, I know a lot of guys who just decided to go online with what is it, whatnots?
Yep.
Or what's that? What is whatnot?
eBay
Yeah.
Live, whatnot, live selling apps.
So it's like
yeah.
they're like, hey, we can make just as much doing that without having to pay for travel or tables, and we don't have to compete with again, it's like these shows, again, a lot of times they're not focusing on the comics. You have fan art people all over, so it's kind of like
You're lost in the crowd.
Again, it's just like, the thing is, like, when I'm doing a show, if I have a booth in the main area, a lot of the people that come in, the majority don't give a shit who I am or what I've done. They just look at the book and it's like, oh, that's, we want to buy the book. But if I do the, what do you call it, Artist Alley, I get a lot of old fans and people are looking for the art, but you're not necessarily getting the same crowd as, so it's kind of like, I either do both. I've thought about that, but then again, the cost goes up, and it's like, and you could, as far as commissions go, I could do those online. I could just put in, I could just say, hey, I'm taking commissions and I'll send them to you and you pay the shipping. And it's like, it's the same amount of work.
The new thing that we're seeing that has become such a big part about all this, and you kind of mentioned it with these live selling platforms, is now you have a lot of creators that are going to the cons and they're taking a couple hours out of their day to go jump on a eBay Live with Big Clutch, or eBay Live with Drew from Wanted Comics, or eBay Live with Jesse, or whatever, and they sit down and they'll spend 2 hours doing some little sketches on books, signing books and selling them, and they'll make their 3,000, 5,000, 1,000,
right,
whatever it is, to kind of like make that con worth being at.
Right.
And that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's like you could, I could make just as much not doing the cons. The cons, again, you're connecting with people, you're connecting with the locals. So that's great. I love that aspect of it. But it's like, financially, a lot of times it's like, you'll break even or you won't even make a profit. Especially, if I'm going on my own, usually if a con flies me there, puts me up, and that's different.
Yeah.
Then when I have to, invest in a big booth, set it up, taking all that, and then hoping that we can kind of break even with that. And that's the thing. It's like we might kind of just stick with the locals, or if a con really wants to have us, then to take our wares. But it's like the other thing that I guess people don't realize, it's how draining it gets. Like the thing is, I wish I was more of an extrovert. Like I see guys, some artists that just feed off the audience. They're like, they love the attention, they love getting that, and it's like they love the interacting. It drains me, man. It's like it just it's not necessarily the interaction. The thing is, it's the sales pitch.
Yes.
It's the talking to people that again aren't there as fans. They're just there like, oh, I like your book, I like your images. What is this about? So you're trying to be personable. You're trying to be like very engaging. And it just like feels afterwards, it just after, like I was at a show in Denver, and I had a friend with me, and she was helping run the booth, and this was like Sunday. The show's over. You know, we're packing up. It's last day. It's like, and it's the show's over, so it's just the veil's down. And it's like, as she's putting away, it's like, you know, I'm just, oh yeah, can you do that, that. And then we're cleaning up, and she looks at me and she's like, hey, Joe, are you mad at me? It's like, I go, what? Are you mad? Because, you know, you're so somber. You're so like, you know, are you mad? I'm like, oh, no. It's just the show's over.
Yeah.
I can stop pretending to be, hey, what's going on, guys?
A carnival barker.
Yeah. And it's just like, she didn't understand that. She's an extrovert, you know, so she's on the whole time. I'm like, I'm done. Like, I don't have to put up a front. And it's usually we call it con blues, like, because it takes about a day.
Crud.
Yeah, well, con crud is different.
Oh,
con
that's the
crud is
sickness.
you get the sick.
Yeah.
But the depressing, very low energy feeling I get, like Monday and Tuesday, it usually by Wednesday it starts like fading. By Tuesday it starts fading, but Monday for sure, I'm just in a very, like, I have no energy to just deal with things. It's just, I'm irritable, and it's like, I always thought that it's like, oh, maybe all the drinking, maybe, you know, it's exhausting. And then I stopped drinking, and it was still there. And it wasn't until actually a show in Arizona, I think it was Amazing Arizona, that I was very upbeat when I woke up. I was, you know, kind of like, yeah, like, you know, time to work. I get in the what do you call it? The cab. And on the way there, I just feel this lump, like this feeling, just boom. It's like, that's the first time I noticed it. It's like, whoa, what's that? And as soon as I get off, I'm like very like unengaging with people. Like they're like, hey, Joe, what's going on? Hey, you know, and very sort of cold. And it wasn't until I got there that I realized until I got to my booth, then it's like I have to, you know, start getting into character. And it's like, oh shit, that's what that is. It's like I had to stop pretending, or I had to get into character to go run a booth. And it's like, I don't know if other people have that approach.
Well, I've just discovered this, and it's changed my life post-con. I literally now write myself half of the time of the con is a decompression time.
Yeah.
So after we did San Diego, Brian and I rode back to Phoenix with Brian, and I stayed at a friend's house, no comic talk the entire time. I sat by his pool. I had my coffee. I smoked my cigar.
Right.
Had nice dinners. Nothing business for that decompression time. Just soul searching, focusing on you. And I've never felt better after a San Diego. I just haven't.
Right. No, there's definitely a decompression mode that I get into, but it's like it sucks when I want to get back and get my head back into work, and it's just not clicking.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of times you'll have that where things just don't work. Right. Like what I'm saying is like the faces just don't look right. The figure doesn't look right. Everything looks bad. And I've gotten to the point where I just want to tear the page apart because it's so frustrating.
It's funny you said that, because that's the entire Bob Seger song, Turn the Page.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, about being strung out on the road. All the faces look the same, you know, and that's a huge rock and roll phenomenon that you wake up I mean, I had it on the convention circuit. I was doing 32 shows a year. And I remember waking up one Sunday morning, and I was like, I don't know what town I'm in. Every one of these hotels looks the same.
Yep.
Yeah, I get that. I've had my friends and family, even fans sometimes, you know, wow, that's so cool. You get to go here, you get to go there, you travel. It's like, how does that feel? Like, you know, it's like, well, I get to see the airport and the hotel. I get to eat someplace, and then I go see the convention. So, and, you know, rinse and rewind and do over. It's like, and repeat. So that's all, you know, you go to New York, it's, if I have time, I'll get to check out stuff. But predominantly it's us go to the Javits, walk back to the hotel, decompress, get some food, then go back to the hotel, then do Javits again. It's like, so you don't really get to see anything. You get to see something, I guess, on the way to the airport. But yeah, most of the time when I've done these things, it's just work.
Yeah.
And, doing it for 30 years, it's like, it's just like, oh, you get to go to San Diego Comic-Con. Oh my God, that's so awesome. It's like, it's work. It's like, I wish I was that enthusiastic about it. Like, ooh, let's go do this and that. And it's like, no, you're there to work, and I'm there to, sell books, and that's predominantly what I'm there for. It's like to push our book to other people, and hopefully they like our work, and like our wares, and they continue to support us because that's our lifeblood.
Well, one of the big things
I have one more question. One more question before we go. Can you tell me about the Marvel crossover, Wolverine, Elektra, Silver Surfer? How did that come across, and how cool was that, or was it not cool? How did that happen?
Well, the Devil's Reign thing, it's like I did the Ballistic Wolverine and Weapon Zero Silver Surfer.
Yep.
Like I didn't get it. I think Mike did the Wolverine Elektra thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it just like from what I can remember, it was just Marvel hit us up, or we hit Marvel up. I don't remember. It was just like we at the studio, Mark or David Wool or Brad Foxhoven or one of them was asking, okay, which one would you want to do? What character would you want to do? With who? And it's I think we all wanted Wolverine. The thing is, Larry Hama was supposed to. Well, Larry Hama wrote the story, but I think I don't remember if it was late or something, and he kind of just said, "Here, just write whatever you want" or something, and then he'll script it. I don't remember exactly the how things came down, but I feel like there were scenes where I just kind of, hey, let's put Wolverine in a rave. Hey, let's put Wolverine at a church. Hey, let's do do this or do that. Like I don't remember exactly how things were.
I think people were just wanted anything that was coming out of Top Cow at the time. I think the Top Cow was to me my favorite little studio that kind of happened from the whole Image thing. The amount of talent that was there was unreal. There's a couple questions I want to ask about that time period, and you kind of mentioned Michael Turner. To me, he was always one of the people that just such a bummer that we lost so early. I talk about him a lot because he had the same type of bone cancer that my brother had, and my brother luckily beat it because he had it 10 years later. And I feel like if there at one point Mike kind of like was told that he beat it and then it came back, and then I feel like if it was 10 years later, we would still have Mike today. What was it like being around Mike at that time, and can you talk a little bit about Michael Turner?
I always bring this up, how when we were at Top Cow, there was a big turnaround in people. People would come in, and then leave. Like I wasn't at the studio that much early on, like because I was living in East LA. It's kind of like it was too much work to drive there at the time. I was just like, he basically, whenever someone would come in, we would look at their work and it's like, oh, they're going to stick around, or what happened to that person. Mike got there and he got his table and he put his work up. And I remember hanging out with, I don't know if it was Nathan Cabrera or David Finch, one of those guys, or I don't remember, one of those guys I was talking to, and we were looking at his work, and it was backgrounds or some figure work. And I think it was a darkness, but suffice to say, we're like, how long do you give him? And we're like, maybe a month, 2. Like, it's like, it's okay. His work it's not up to snuff, but it's like, I think yeah, I don't know. It's like we were like very skeptical of his work, and didn't think, too much of it. 2 months go by, and I think he started doing Ballistic Wolverine, Ballistic Wetworks. I don't. One of the pages he put up, I just remember walking in, looking at the pages, and being floored, and going like, "Holy shit!" Like it was just one of those like, "Oh fuck, this guy's a different animal." Like this guy's got it. Like when you talk about it, that's that cool factor that we all want. Some call it the wow factor, but Todd had it, Rob had it, Jim had it, Mark had it. It's that fucking wow, holy shit, that looks fucking awesome. And it's like, and that's I remember that changing the perspective. Like whatever this guy's doing, and I bring this up early on. I think before that, Mike put me aside and asked if if he could ask me some questions. I was like, yeah, man, you wanted to pick my brain. And he goes, okay, who's your favorite artist? And I would name off the artists: Todd McFarlane, Michael Golden, Jim Lee. It's like Art Adams. Why? Well, I like I like McFarlane's layouts. I like Wils's anatomy. I like my perspective. This is what I like about these artists. It's like, okay, and who do you consider hot right now? Like, as far as artists, who do you think are really, really good and really hot? And I would name off who I thought were hot. And again, why? Well, because of this, this person's doing some sexy girls. This one's doing some cool, dynamic men. This one's doing some cool. And so that was,
picking your brain.
Picking my brain. So it's like, a few months later, he altered his work and he started doing that. And I thought, oh, it's like he's using some of what I, mentioned. I found out he did that with everybody. Oh, he did that with everybody at the studio. Yeah, he basically picked their brain, and it's like, and he took it and he created his own unique style.
Yeah.
And it's like, and if you look at it, it's like there's a little bit of this guy and a little bit of that guy, and his layouts are look like this, and it's like his approach is a little bit. So he kind of became his own monster, taking on like what's cool, He was Bruce Lee. He learned to be like water.
Yeah.
He was like his approach was so technical and so he was able to really elevate his style. Like I don't think anybody else at the studio was able to do that. Like I know I was I had my head up my ass too much to really be able to see my work outside of what I was doing. It's like I always look at it, and then it isn't until like a year, 2 years later that I go back and I was like, oh shit, that's a horrible looking figure. That that eye is completely tweaked. No, I mean the thing is,
that's all artists.
Well, the thing is, you don't see your faults until you get better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually one of the advices I tell young artists, up and coming artists. It's like, look at your work a year later, a few months later, spot the mistakes. If you spot the mistakes, if you spot the things that aren't right, you've gotten better. If you go back a year and you look at your work and this stuff still kicks ass, it's like you haven't grown, you haven't moved on, you haven't.
Yeah. Great advice.
The other advice is like, I get a lot of artists who come in and they're in their 50s, 60s, 40s, older, and they're like, I used to love art, and what happened? It's like, well, I was never any good. What do you mean? It's like, well, it's the stuff up here, I couldn't get it down there. It's like, it's just, and I tell them, well, everybody had that. Every artist, every successful artist has those moments where they're like, either quit or move forward, and they always move forward. And the thing that I heard that really resonated with me is that those moments are when your ability hasn't caught up to your imagination or talent.
Yeah. Like
your imagination is there and your ability hasn't gotten there. It's like, so you're working towards that. And again, I've had those moments where it's just so frustrating because what I want to put down, what I'm imagining, isn't coming down. It's just not working.
Yeah.
And it's like you either go over it, bulldoze your way through it, go around it, but you have to find a way to overcome that moment. And like I said, I feel like every single professional out there has had multiple times when they wanted to quit. And the only difference is they didn't. They just continued with it and said, fuck it, I'm going to keep moving on. And even, I mean, go ahead.
I hate to interrupt you when you're in that story, but the next question is an important one to a lot of, obviously to you, but a lot of people that watch this channel. My content creation career started because of comic book speculation and selling comic books on the secondary market and this and that. And one of the things that really drives that is optioning of properties. When are we going to get a Lady Mechanika TV show, an animation? I mean, what's going on with that? Have you heard anything about that? Because this to me is the perfect character IP story to see in a TV series, a movie. I mean, it's perfect for it.
Well, we had two serious options, and one didn't work out because the champion at the studio, the person that was pursuing the producer, left the studio. And once they leave that particular studio, the person taking over they don't want to take up the other person's projects. So they want their own. So that happened. It felt decent where we were going, and unfortunately that didn't work out. There was another one, and this one was I think during COVID, and it's like they basically it came down to I understood what creative differences was after that, because it's like it just didn't mesh with the character that I created. It just they had their own perspective, they had their own backstory. Like at no point did they approach me to say, hey, let's what's the backstory of Mechanika? Let's create, like there was no, it didn't feel like a collaboration. It felt more like, hey, we're optioning your rights to this character, and we're going to do our version of your character, but our version's not going to look anything or feel or act or everything's. I think it's like I mentioned that it was basically a mechanical female in the 1800s, and that's it. She had mechanical limbs, but her personality, her world, everything was just not right. It just it didn't have the same vibe. It was like, the thing is, I'm sure that we might have been able to work something out, but this was again during COVID, and I had other things on my mind, and I was like, do I really want to pursue? Do I really want to continue with this and have this be the first showcasing of our character, and it's not a true or honest or a representation of what we crafted for the last 10 years,
Yes.
So I just felt like I'd rather not have anything than have something that isn't the right representation of it.
At Swornfest this year, Brian Polito said something that was absolutely amazing, and he kind of talked about it, and it was similar to what you're talking about, where he is not going to let somebody take this character that he's crafted and he's put so much time into and dumb it down in any way. And I shouldn't say dumb it down, but water it down. And this character is this. And if it's not this and what you want to do, then I don't want to have any part about that. And that is so important, especially nowadays.
It's called integrity.
Yes. Yes.
But
absolutely amazing.
It's just like, it bummed me out because I'm like, we have all these stories that you can feed from, and all you have to do is, incorporate me and just bring me in and say, hey, well, like, this is where we're going. And I could have corrected it. It's like, hey, well, this isn't what this character would do. This is the way the character would act. These two characters don't why are you changing the dynamic of these two characters? It's just like it's like even early on, the producer did tell me like, hey, it's not going to be your version of the character. It's like it's going to be something like, are you okay with that? I go, as long as it's, I understand, but if it's better than what I'm doing, if it's cool, yeah, let's do that. Like I know that it's not perfect, and I know that someone out there can see this and elevate it and make it better, but at least use some of the core aspects of it. It's kind of like you're buying Spider-Man and you're changing its origin. You're buying Batman and you're changing the whole purpose of the character.
Yeah.
It's just like there is a reason why the character is the way she is, and there is a reason why the characters that interact with her are a certain way. And it's like I just felt at least keep them to some consistency to the what we've crafted for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
So
amen. Well, that's one of the things that we're constantly keeping us as collectors, and over here at Beyond Wednesday, we're constantly keeping our ear to those train tracks to try and hear for anything. So I'm really hoping that, in the future, somebody jumps back on this and turns it into something, because, like I said, it's perfect for it. It's amazing.
I mean, obviously, I'd love that too.
Yeah.
Movie, TV, cartoon, yeah. Video game.
Another one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I talk about this another thing whenever I can, being from Phoenix, growing up here in Phoenix, the Native American culture, the Hispanic culture, you have I love Dia de los Muertos culture and that whole thing, and you have an amazing Dia de los Muertos aesthetic to some of the Lady Mechanika stuff with the character that. Talk about this a little bit, and how did this get involved in Lady Mechanika?
Well, it's I always liked it. This is I was always interested in that, and I wanted to incorporate the first time we had this conversation. We were in Phoenix, actually, of all
Yeah.
At Phoenix. Not Expo, but yeah, it was what do you call it? Peter Steigerwald and I, when I was at Aspen. So this was probably 2011 or 12, and we were having a conversation, and I mentioned I want to do the Dia de los Muertos Mechanika, and I also want to do like a samurai Mechanika, and I was just talking about all that, and it's like, and I mentioned that I wanted to do Dia de los Muertos, but I wasn't exactly sure if it would fit in her time period, because I know the whole sugar masks makeup stuff, I think got popular in the early 1900s, and our story takes place in 1880s, 1870s. So I was like, I don't know if I can do that around then. And there was a fan in front of us who overheard that, and she had a commission from Peter. And she, because of that, she goes, "Can you do a commission of Lady Mechanika in sugar mask?" So Peter is the first, he's the one who actually is the first time, that's the first ever published Dia de los Muertos Mechanika.
Yeah, that sketch that Peter did, right? This where'd it go?
The one you just showed.
Yeah, that one's absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it's like, so that's the thing. Peter got really popular in our little circle doing the Mechanika in Sugar Skull. So it's like he was kind of like, for a period there, he was getting a lot of commissions to do Mechanika and other characters in the Sugar Skull. And I ended up doing a few covers, and but the thing is, we ended up doing La Dama de la Muerte in like 2015, I believe, or 2015. Yeah, actually, because that's of all things, my dad, actually today's his birthday. It's like he passed away, and that kind of while I was working on that, or right before, and so it's like it fed into the whole story and vibe of the book.
It's amazing.
But we did that, and La Dama de la Muerte, we get almost as many followers or fans and sales than we do regular Mechanica.
Yeah.
So that's on our to-do list. Is we're working on a separate IP that has nothing to do with Mechanica, that deals with the character La Dama de la Muerte. So it's like we're working on that to hopefully maybe show something this year, maybe just an image, and then hopefully release a whole story next year.
Well,
it'll be a
crossing our
separate.
fingers.
We're working on the world. It'll be more what they called Weird West or supernatural.
Yeah.
But it'll deal with a lot more Native American folklore and Mexican folklore and the South, and it'll take place around the early 1800s. So it'll predate Mechanica, but there's a whole rich history in the Southwest that we wanted to exploit.
Amen. Well, listen, we are 2 hours in, ladies and gentlemen, and it has just flown by. Jesse and Dennis, you got anything else that you want to hit on?
I'm good to go.
Well, no, last question I have is, as you start picking up this steam on your own and you have that breathing room.
Yeah.
Yeah, no pun intended. Do you have your eyes set on ever going back to the mainstream and hitting some kind of wish fulfillment character?
It's like I realized the way this industry works. Pretty much every single artist that's made a name for themselves, that's high up on the always they made their bones at DC or Marvel. I mean, it's just that's just part of it. You work with these characters and you get a much bigger fan base, and that's primarily why I wanted to join DC at the time, was to build up a big enough audience and branch it out to my creator. So it's like if I was to do something along those lines, it would be for that. Or if there was a project that really wow, you get to play around with this character and possibly do whatever you want with it, maybe, or having a writer that I'd love to work with.
Yeah.
But it's like we don't have to financially. It's like I don't have to sell as many books to make just as much as I would working for one of the big two.
But if Marvel or DC called you tomorrow and they got into a bidding war and they said you have to choose one of us or you have to choose one character and it's yours, what would it be?
I mean, it's the two big two. It's like either Spider-Man or Batman.
Nice.
Yeah, it's just because
I'd love to see it for sure.
It's all in my mind. I would do something. I'd love to do something equivalent to Hush in the Spider-Man world, but with the old school, Peter Parker's still a teen and all. See, the thing is, again, if I had I got offered X-Men in the early 2000s. It was Extreme X-Men, and but it didn't have the characters I wanted to play around with. I think it had Storm and Forge, but it just, I was like, no, I want to do the lineup that that Jim did.
Yeah.
That's because that's where my head was at. And it's like I also got offered X-23, the ongoing, but I turned it down because I was drawing Wraithborn, and I was like, I'm already drawing a teenager with powers. It's kind of like I'd rather focus on my own character, and she kind of looks like her. It's like I would just put all my energy into that.
Yeah.
At the time, I felt like, oh, it's going to sell just, I'll make just as much. I mean, now when I look back, I'm like, yeah, those two would have been a pretty decent books in my resume. But it's like, live and learn.
Yeah, amen. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys want to check out the Kickstarter, the link is in the description. We've also pinned it in the live chat. Two people in the live chat have said that they've backed it tonight already. So,
awesome.
Yeah,
thank you.
And listen, you guys, this is one of the best IPs in comics, in my opinion. If you're not already, if you don't already know Lady Mechanika and you aren't already collecting it, please jump on this. It's worth looking into. It's a great character, great design. The art is on point. Great unlockables with this. Just many good things. And you've already unlocked a ton of the unlockables. Yeah. You've got some to go.
It's like, I have what do you call it? Like I mentioned this at every show. It's like when we have a lot of non-comic book fans, like pretty much at every show, it never fails. We always get at least one fan come up and tell me how their mom, their sister, their daughter, their whatever aren't into comics, but for some reason this particular book resonates with them, and they love it. Like I tell a story again at a Denver show. I was this woman came up dressed like Emma Frost, fully decked in white, and she got to the table and she's like, "Look at me, this is your fault." And I was like, "Oh, what did I do?" And it's like, so she wasn't into comics, but I think her roommate, if I recall, was, and she never cared, but she saw Mechanika, and at the time I only had the 3 issues, the Aspen issues, so she read them and she fell in love with them, but there wasn't any more, so she needed to feed that
itch.
That itch. So she started reading and looking at her X-Men and Avenger books that her roommate had, and then she goes, "Now look at me." It's like, so we've gotten quite a bit of non-comic book fans, so that we're pretty proud of that. We can grab people that aren't into the medium and bring them into the medium.
That is a proof. That's proof that you have a hit, in my opinion. Once you see people cosplaying the character, it's a winner.
Yeah. Well, from day one, in Long Beach, it's like the very first. Like the book was only out for a month or 2. I don't remember when Long Beach was in 2010, but it's like Rose Ivy. She dressed up like Mechanika. I saw this. It was so freaky to see my character come to life. Like I just created her like less than a year ago, and here comes someone who looked dead on. So it was pretty badass.
Yeah, and you have a character that the percentage of women buyers is extremely high.
Yeah,
I'm be interested when this ends to see what that percentage is.
Right. Yeah, it's the thing is I found that out during when I was at Top Cal, when I was on Darkness and Weapon Zero, and I saw that like J. Scott Campbell and Mike Turner, they're getting a lot more female fans.
Yep.
And it's because there's more females like female characters and males like female characters. So I was like, once I jumped on Magdalena, my fan base jumped.
Yes.
And I was like, so from then on, I was like, when I was considering creating a steampunk book, right off the bat, it's I don't know what she is yet, but I know she's going to be it's going to be a female lead. I wasn't sure what I was going to make her, vampire or time travel. I don't know, but the thing is, I knew that at the time I need to have a female lead because it'll double our base, it'll double our fan base.
Yep.
Well, it didn't hurt that Mike Turner and J. Scott are 2 of the sexiest men in comics, like next to John Cassaday.
And they draw sexy women.
Yes. They're like the perfect magnet for hot women that are geek girls.
Right.
This is a great comment from another one of our great guests. He comes on the show quite often, and we love him over here. Shout out to Nick Barucci over at Dynamite. He says, jumping in to say hi, Joe Benitez, one of the nicest and most talented people in our industry. The industry is so much better off with him being
He owes me money, that's why. He's saying good stuff. No, you don't, Nick. I'm just kidding.
Nick, we love you, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, don't start that rumor. Rich Johnson will have a front page headline.
No. I'm just saying that's why he has to compliment me, because he owes me something.
Yeah. So, Joe,
thank you, Nick.
Thank you for coming on the first time.
Yep.
We're going to bug you to get you on here more often, and you're always welcome. There's a seat always open over here for you. It was a wonderful 2 hours, and thank you so much. So, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah. Make sure you guys go sign up for the Kickstarter. Follow Lady Mechanika. Follow Joe. Go check out all his links. We have them in the description below. And we'll see you guys next Tuesday here on the Industry of Comics. Adios.